are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, as usual, the one, the only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be back. It's good to have a game to talk about. If you follow us on Twitter at YWT podcast, you'll see that I tweeted right before we started recording here that things changed a little bit, and we are actually recording this show as usual instead of doing a live show post Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe has been moved to 7:30 tonight. This show will come out probably right about the time the puck drops. So we're not really going to talk about that game, but I will be doing a post-game video for it. So, Kevin, why did we end up getting moved around 3 different times? Because last time we talked, this game was supposed to be at 3:00. Then it was 2:00.
I don't think that the first switch was really that big of a deal. Like 3-2 was just because they were worried about some sunlight issues. And like, okay, look, that's happened before. They did that with a couple of different, there's Winter Classics that happened. Like, I think the Winter Classic the Flyers played in against the Rangers all those years ago was the same thing. It was supposed to be 1:00 and they pushed it to 3 because they were worried about certain things with the weather and things like that. And it's like, okay, so you have a couple things to deal with there, and it makes a lot of sense. And then all of a sudden, and yesterday was just brutal in terms of the way a lot of things went down, because everything about this is supposed to be a really cool scene, and they were taking pictures and people were talking to the players, and it was all this stuff about how cool this was going to look. Right. And don't get me wrong.
It does look cool.
Right. And don't get me wrong. It looks really cool, and it's a cool concept, and they put the rink together nicely, and the scenery in the background is excellent.
Insane.
But they got on the ice and they had warm-ups and everything seemed okay. They got on the ice and had most of the first period. And as the first period's going on, there's guys just tripping over holes in the ice, legit holes in the ice. Like, it was slush. It was just awful conditions. And they didn't, again, like for a 3:00 start that day, they didn't account for sunlight being a problem then, and I don't know if it was because the forecast said something differently or whatever, but they didn't account for that. And after the first period is over, they're trying to patch the ice up like crazy. I think the intermission went from being the typical 17, 18 minutes to they were on like a half hour of doing this before they finally came out and started talking about
they decided to extend the
we
intermission.
have to suspend the game and push it back, and things like that, which is just an awful move. And the reason I say is because if you planned accordingly, if you would have looked at it and said, we can't play in these conditions, the ice will never hold up for 60 minutes of gameplay, then you would have been able to turn around and say, okay, you know what? It's unfortunate, but the game is going to start at 7:00 at night now on the East Coast, or 8:00 on the East Coast, or even 9 or 10 on the East Coast, because that's what you needed to do. Whatever you needed to do, at least it hadn't started yet. And you're going, conditions are bad. And for the safety of the players, we're not even going to attempt to start this game. And it will be a full game at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And everybody probably would have been fine with that. But the argument or the frustration came from starting this game at 3:00 and saying, we're going to play, getting through a period, and then realizing as the period went on, by the way,
that it's just
these conditions are terrible. Yeah. Like, I think it was the short-sightedness on you could have seen that the ice was bad and you let them go out and play on it anyway. And let's just my response to this is the same as it would be for any other team out there. Like, think of Colorado playing in that game, and obviously they're done with their game now, so they're okay. But what happens if Nathan McKinnon turns his knee the wrong way because the ice is bad and his season is over because he tore an ACL or something like that? How do you feel as the team? Right. It's an embarrassment by the league, because then at that point in time,
you Colorado Stanley Cup hopes in it.
Quite possibly. But like, the point being, you also took a player who you used to market the game and put him at risk to make sure this game happened at a time when it shouldn't have been happening. Right. When you could have saved it for when it could, because I watched the end of it later, and the ice conditions looked fine once they got it back out there at night. But during the day, it was
local time.
Right, which is crazy in and of itself,
Right. The game restarted at midnight East Coast time, and I would imagine a large portion of our viewers, myself included, did not stay up to watch the finish of that game. I stayed up to watch about the first 10 minutes and go, yep, it looks pretty. Okay, good night. But I'm not going to finish a game that restarts at midnight, especially when I don't know about it. But either way, the fact that the NHL didn't stop it the second it became a problem, even if you can somehow kid yourself into saying that the ice was safe during warm-ups and, when you actually dropped the puck, it was a problem long before the end of the period. And the fact that they even continued to the end of the period is honestly a little questionable to me. And I would be I would love to be a fly on the wall in the NHLPA's office.
Sure. And look, and so back to the actual original question, because they moved it up an hour. And then apparently what was said was that the decision to move the game back to 7:30 Eastern time, 4:30 local time, which, by the way, is still questionable at the moment, I would say. Like, as we're recording this on Sunday morning, waiting for this game to start, yes, it's still a 7:30 Eastern time start, but
yeah, I plan on
I think I anticipate that they're
games.
going to take a good long look at the ice and maybe try to warm them up and then look and go, well, is it good enough?
Well,
Because if it's not, then we're going to hold off for another hour.
Well, maybe people will have time to listen to the podcast before the game starts after all.
Maybe, who knows? But so bottom line being that they made that decision in the morning. So they've already decided to push it back a little bit. And the only thing I will say in that regard is by the time it's 4:30 at night out there, it's, the sun's starting to set, so you don't have overhead sunlight. You probably have it starting to fall behind the trees a little bit. You might be creating a spot where you're getting into that colder temperature where it will hold up better, because the start time of yesterday's game realistically was 12 o'clock out there. So because of that, it's midday. The sun is right up in a position where it's going to just, and that's the shame of it.
Well, Kevin, you're not trying to imply that the NHL planned something poorly, are you?
No,
might have been a little short-sighted and poorly executed. They would
poorly executed. There you go. Poorly executed. I was going to say the planning is fine. The planning was fine. They planned something really cool. They put a new twist on something that's been done over and over and over again, and found a way to make it new and exciting, which is always great.
Yeah.
And then they executed poorly and I'm not saying executed poorly like in the sense that everything else about it didn't work. Everything else about it works. The rink on the 18th hole of a golf course, the rink in a spot where the lake is in the background and the trees are in the background and where you can set it up, and it does have a pond hockey vibe to it. It really does. And you got, I had a comment from somebody yesterday on Twitter as I was kind of going off about the situation, say it's also like the NHL was ridiculous for not making San Jose one of the teams, because Tahoe is literally an extension of the Bay Area. And it's like, you're not wrong, but like the point is that they were trying to get a marquee matchup for both games. Right. So they looked back at the year prior, I guess, and went, Colorado Vegas is a good one, and Philly Boston is a good one.
If it was 2009, the matchup would have been LA versus Anaheim. Or I'm sorry,
San Jose,
LA versus San Jose. There probably would have been 2 or 3 games there, and they would have put all the teams like.
Well, I think that's also a case too. You're right. I think there would have been more games,
but those teams aren't relevant nowadays.
Well, it's
not on a national stage like Colorado is and like Las Vegas is. But I do really love this concept of the location game, right? The Lake Tahoe, the landmark game,
right?
I would love to see St. Louis play a game in a rink under the arch. That'd be pretty cool.
Sure.
Right? The only neat things that you can just do all over the country.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can the only area where I see that being a problem is in situations where this works right now because how many places don't have fans. So you're going, we don't have to factor that in. Although someone did a buddy of mine even messaged me last night and goes, imagine if they did have fans and something like this, and you said, oh, the game starts at 3. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't come or starts at 12 because that's when time they'd be off of. And oh, wait, no, it doesn't. We're going to play one period. Now you got to come back at 9. If there was fans, it would have been not a totally different story, but it would have been like.
It happens in baseball.
Yeah, it does. But what I mean, in saying that, is that you hype up this big event, you try to get as many people as possible there, and then you go out and realize, oh, by the way, after watching a crap product for a period because the ice is so bad, we're gonna make everybody leave and come back in 9 hours.
Well, sure, but like I said, the Phillies have done that all the time. You watch 3 crap innings, go sit under the bleachers and drink for 3 hours, and then come back and watch them lose for 6 more innings. That's just a nice Saturday evening in the summer.
I guess. I mean, I understand where you're coming from with it, but
I know.
See, I look at the Tahoe location and I go, if you did want to make it a fan event, I'm sure there is a way, maybe not the stadium size that you can have, but I'm sure there's a way to set up makeshift bleachers to make it something exclusive. We can find a way to get 10,000 people there or something like that. And it's not the outdoor spectacle, but it becomes an exclusive.
Sure. And you can build a temporary outdoor venue fairly easily.
I mean, it's a golf course. It's a golf course where it's hosted tournaments before. So if you can put a grandstand on the 18th hole of the golf course for people to watch anyway, then you can put a bleacher on. You can put a set of bleachers on around this rink and find a way to make it a thing. I mean, they built a makeshift like sort of like press box / like operational studio space or whatever you want to call it, so that they had that ability too. You know, like if you could build that, then you could build a place for fans to be.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a rink at the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
Oh, geez.
Seating all around the top of the Grand Canyon. Perfect.
People are gonna watch from up there.
Perfect.
The only
those are your Green Monster seats in Boston.
Yeah, I guess so.
Tell me that's not a cool experience. Come on.
Oh, it's a cool experience, but it sounds more like an NHL 21 experience than it does a real life experience. Because if they already had trouble with ice in Lake Tahoe in February, then they're never going to get a rink in the Grand Canyon.
Well, okay,
but it does make the game they had last year, the Winter Classic, the last big spectacle event before everything shut down in Dallas, of all places, look like a major accomplishment because they really pulled that off well.
Right. I was going to say, I'm not really sure what went wrong here because like you said, there was a game last year in Dallas. There was a Winter Classic in Dodger Stadium, was there not?
Stadium Series, I believe. The Winter Classic specifically under that name has never been
in a warm weather city.
Not in a warm weather city because it was in Dallas last year. That was the Winter Classic, but it's never been something that happens in like it's always typically been more of the East Coast cities that get the Winter Classic, and then they've done to expand upon that. They've done the Stadium Series in LA, they do it in Anaheim. They did something like that though. They've had Stadium Series games with some of those West Coast teams, but like when you think of the Winter Classic specifically, you're thinking of, let's put it this way, they had it in Fenway, they had it in Citizens Bank Park, they had it in Buffalo. So Boston's hosted one. I think Boston might have hosted another one against Montreal that was in Gillette Stadium. So they've moved around.
Yeah.
I think Pittsburgh's probably hosted one at some point. I know Pittsburgh's hosted Stadium Series games. Chicago, Detroit got one. I mean, I think the Big House was a Winter Classic.
Detroit, Toronto.
Right. So like you get games like that, you know, because every year I believe the pecking order of the outdoor game is Canada has the Centennial Classic or something like that, or not the Centennial Classic, but they have like their own outdoor classic.
Yeah, they have the Heritage Classic. Is it
Heritage Classic? That's what it was. Yes, thank you. So it's the Heritage Classic that's between two Canadian teams,
Calgary and Edmonton,
or something like that. Yeah. And then they have the Winter Classic, and then they have a Stadium Series, one or two Stadium Series teams. But that was exactly the point with this setting, was you were starting to saturate the market with that a little bit too much, because you're going, there's one in Canada, there's already one in the US, and now you're adding two more because you're going to call it the Stadium Series, one or two more. And you're going, so now you're having 4 outdoor games a year. And it's one thing to sit there. I think it would be one thing to sit there and say, we're going to pick a location just like they did for this, and say 4 teams are going to play in this weekend set, or 8 teams are going to play, and there's 4 games. It's like a tournament.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, and they can't do that. Like,
it's a pre-scheduled tournament, but sure.
Well, right. That's what I mean. Like, but like, it would be cool if they did it like a college basketball setting where 4 teams go to a place and you go, okay. And the next day, the game,
all just play each other.
But we're going to have a game in the early afternoon and a game in the evening on the same ice surface, or a game on Tuesday and a game on Wednesday. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not specifically this, but a game on Tuesday and a game on Wednesday. And then the game on Thursday or Friday, to give them maybe an extra day, is the remaining 2 teams that won.
That'd be cool.
You know, but they can't, not in a regular season, but I do think you could pick a place, and this goes back to like Lake Tahoe or any neutral location you can kind of think of that would kind of fit. Take 8 teams and say, we're going to have 4 games over the course of 4 days or something like that, or something. And we're going to make it this setting. And you almost don't even have to do it where it's the outdoor game per se. Like, if you can find a place where it's almost sort of domed, or like you can set up the rink in such a way where it's like, hey, the rink is here, but there's something in the background that's significant in some capacity, then you make that your backdrop for it. And it's like, hey, look at this really cool thing we did. And it's not just because, I think that's the argument that a lot of people have when it comes to an outdoor game, is there's 2 teams that get picked to play in this thing, and every year it kind of goes down. Like, this is the first time we're doing 2 of these in the same place in the same weekend, and we're calling it this big outdoor special, right? Like, there's a Saturday outdoor classic and a Sunday outdoor classic at Lake Tahoe, not, one or the other. And you pick these two teams and you go, well, this year's Winter Classic is going to be this against this, right? And then there's 30 other teams or 29 other teams in the league that are going, unless they got a stadium series or got the Heritage Classic, that are going, well, what about us? Are we not good enough for your marketing? Like that kind of thing. Like,
right.
Like after a while, because you're right. When I was trying to get to the point where it's like, oh, there's 3 different games, and you started with it starts with Chicago
There's
and
the
Boston.
Chicago game, and then there's the everybody else game.
Well, I was say if you're not Chicago, like if you're Chicago, Boston, Philly, Pittsburgh, then like you're getting used to doing this
for sure.
And if you're any other team in the league, you're probably like, that's why the San Jose argument just came up, because how many times has San Jose played in an outdoor game? And then you go,
if there's any.
I think one. They might have played in one, but it was many years ago. Like it's been a while. Like,
right, and this
like people are gonna look, but people are gonna right.
5th?
This is the 5th, and but people
Boston,
are gonna look at but people are gonna look at the Flyers and go, you just played in Pittsburgh in 2017. You had you hosted your own in 2019. Now it's 2021 and you're playing in another one. Well, like honestly, was it not like, it's almost like it was a shock that Chicago wasn't picked to be on the other side when they did a West game. But I think they did that because they were going to pick from the West Division. And that's why, like, it would have been bringing a Central team over, which is a little different. But
and here's the thing we're starting to get into is I think the 17 and 19 outdoor games were kind of a gimmick that the Flyers and the Penguins came up with and went to the league and said, hey, we're going to do this cool little home and home. And I think the league bought it. I think we're now getting to the point where the Flyers are going to start getting in. And like we talked about out West, because they're picking relevant teams. The Flyers are in a large market and are theoretically, hopefully, knock on wood, please, going to be a very good team for the next little bit here. So I think while we are already used to it, I think we might be getting more used to it, because I think the Flyers might play several outdoor games in the next couple of years.
I think your theory is half correct with the Pittsburgh one, because I think what it really was is that the league kind of set up this idea that both teams are turning 50 this year. Let's have an outdoor game. And I think that the argument with this is where I think that is where I disagree with what your theory is.
You're about to throw Penn State under the bus?
No. This is where I disagree with what your theory is. They say, let's have this game, 2 teams, 50th year, and it's in Pittsburgh. And I think the Flyers heard that and went, well, when do we get to host one?
Right.
And that's when the fight came in. I think the Flyers pushed for the. What's that?
Wasn't the original plan Penn State?
There was supposed to be one, yeah. And there you go. See, that's a cool idea, because you bring two teams from equal distances apart and put them in a single place, right?
Yeah, I'm used to seeing Happy Valley all white, but I would love to see it half orange, half yellow. That'd be pretty cool.
Be interesting.
That'd be pretty neat. I'm not gonna lie to you.
But you could pick, like, there's places you could pick where you go, if you could find that place. Like, I think didn't Chicago play at Notre Dame against Detroit? And it's like, okay, you kind of pick this central location where people from Chicago are going, yeah, I can get there, and people from Detroit are going, I can get there, and now you bring both fan bases together, like. And that's why I think that what you're talking about. But that's why I think
that would have been great.
But that's why I think the Flyers got a second outdoor game against the Penguins 2 years later, was because if you were going to have it and it wasn't going to be the neutral location where your own fans could go,
the Flyers
from the same distance as the other team, and they're going, well, where's ours? Where's our hosting ability? Like, and not only that, but I think, like, to that point, well, that was only the third at that point, but still, yeah, it's like, okay, that was the third one we've been in, and it's like, if you're going to have us be in another one of these at any point, it better be in one of our buildings.
Right.
Like, if we get to do this,
they did get Citizens Bank Park. Like, the Flyers have hosted half of the outdoor games they played.
Well, yeah, well now, but I think it was when it was 3, and you're going, well, one was in, what was it? One was in Boston, one's in Pittsburgh. Only one's been in Philly, and it's been 8 years or 9 or 7 years.
Yeah, but like when they announced the game in Pittsburgh in 2017, we kind of knew that 2019 in Philadelphia was like very, very likely. I don't know if it was 100%, but we knew.
I think. I'm thinking more of the negotiation process more, and less the actual.
The execution of
it per se, like how they decided to announce. Because when they did announce it, you're right. I think they announced it as, here's this 50th anniversary Flyers Penguins in Pittsburgh, and there's going to but there's going to be another game down the line that will qualify as the same thing, and it's going to be in Philadelphia instead. That was the difference.
We got the Stadium Series jersey right here in the background if you're watching on our YouTube channel at YWT Podcast. Sorry, I was at that game, and it was a lot of fun. We've told that story on this podcast a couple of times in the past.
You're talking about the one in Pittsburgh first because you were at the other one too. That was
I did actually happen to be at both. Yeah.
Well, see, I was never in a position to actually travel to anything. Well, not to travel to Boston. Definitely not in a position to travel to Pittsburgh to do anything. At least at that point in time, I was covering the team, though. That's the thing. Like in 2012, I wasn't doing that. So like I would have loved to have done the Citizens Bank Park game, but you know,
I went to the Phantoms game at the Citizens Bank Park.
Oh, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, and except the problem is we didn't really think about it when we bought our tickets. We didn't think about where the rink was, and we got tickets behind home plate. And if you remember, that rink was across second base and into the outfield. And it turns out when you're sitting in the Diamond Club, you are not elevated in the slightest, and we couldn't see
so
anything.
You were rink level, and you're like watching, yeah.
We left after the first period and watched the rest of the game at Chickies and Pete's. And it feels bad.
Yeah. This is this is why, like, and I don't know, like you've seen the pictures that I post sometimes when I check in from being at a Flyers game this year.
Yep.
That is probably quite possibly one of the most perfect angles you will have
it's
for a lower section. No, see, I still think the best seat in the house is upstairs all the way at the top because I love the vantage point.
Kevin,
the eye in the sky view.
I don't know, man. When there's 38 people in the building and you can hear every word, I don't know. I'd rather
when there's nobody in the building, then that's
I'd rather
the best
be on
seat
that
in the
first
house.
level. Come on now.
Because let's put it this way: like there was a story that came out, or a report that came out earlier this week about how both the Flyers and the Sixers and the center as a whole have basically put in a request to try to have up to 5,000 people be able to attend games in like the next month, like in another month or so.
Right.
And I like, honestly, my first thought is I'm not saying I don't understand why they're doing it. Of course I do. You want to get people back in the building. That is your source of revenue. And even, let's put it this way, after a year of doing what you're doing, you're going to look at it and go, 5,000 is better than nothing. It always will be.
And it'll sound like $1 million on television.
Yeah, it will. But my first thought was, so what happens now? Like from my vantage point, because do I have to go back upstairs? Are they going to sit there and say we can put the 5,000 still spaced apart in a
right.
No, not around this. I was going to say, can they put the 5,000 spaced apart properly in like the lower bowl, and the media will go to the mezzanine and watch from upstairs, and they'll put the tables up there or something like that, because right now and you had me talk about this a little bit before, like after I did the first couple games of the year.
Yeah.
The dynamic is you walk into an empty building and you get to walk the concourse. Like we talked about, I think we texted about this too. If you go to use one of the bathrooms there in between periods, it's a ghost town. You're just walking around an empty concourse while you hear the entertainment or the video going on that's out in the arena in between periods or whatever. Like during warm-ups, if you're doing this, like warm-ups, if you walk the concourse, whether you're going to use a bathroom, get food from like the one stand they have open for the media to get food, things like that, you hear the activity as if you're walking around the concourse during a game.
It has to be surreal.
It is.
Yeah.
It's one of the weirdest. I mean, you almost start to get used to it now. And I think the cool part is that, like, since what game would it have been? I guess the fourth game of the season, the fourth home game of the season, I've had the same seat since, which is kind of cool because now I have this familiarity of it.
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, but I have this familiarity of the angle that I get. And one of the cool parts of that the angle I get is, so the Rangers game on Thursday, they had a power play in overtime. And they're down that end of the ice where I'm sitting. And they set up on the power play, and Artemi Panarin's trying to figure out what his next move is. And his sight line is basically my sight line. Like, I'm just a little higher up than he is based on where I'm sitting, but I'm looking at the same lanes that he is.
Right.
And going, is the cross ice pass there? Am I going back to the blue line? Am I trying to funnel it down low? What can I do? And I love getting that perspective because it makes me see it differently from when I'm all the way upstairs. Upstairs, sure. I'm going to sit there and go, well, it looks like you got that pass. And then down here, it's going to be, no, never mind. Sticks in the lane. I've gotten better over the years at determining from all the way upstairs at determining when somebody deflects a shot.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can still make that identification.
That was my biggest thing about being in the box with you that one time that I did get that press access.
Yeah.
Was you were like, oh, that shot got tipped. I'm like, it did?
Yeah.
What? And you're like, yeah, Raffle tipped it in the slot. I was like, it's what?
I mean, there's a lot
of the shot and you saw the tip.
it's not a sight thing. It's a sound thing. You can hear it, but you can really hear it. Like there's
I'm sure you can really hear it now.
well, so the one I'm probably the last one, I guess, the last Boston game before they went on the road for that one game in DC, and then all the COVID stuff happened. The only goal they scored was it was the first goal of the game. It was early third period. They were on a power play, and JVR tipped one at the front of the net, and that wasn't just a tip. Like, hey, I can sort of hear it. Like, I think I like that was I heard it loud and clear, and I saw it change direction.
He got good wood on it. They showed
like
it on
this
the,
thing
they showed
went,
the replay on
this
TV.
Thing went,
it
well, this thing hit made it like the stick snapped like a pass hit it.
JVR
and then the thing shot downward, like totally different angle. And I'm like, yeah, that's that was a very clear one.
Yeah, it was almost a 3-dimensional one-timer. Like it was crazy.
But it's so cool to be at that angle and hear that. And then, but that's one of the things I thought about when I'm watching a power play is, and to put it in Flyers terms, because I said Artemi Panarin from the other game, but it's Claude Giroux's spot. I'm looking at what Claude Giroux sees, and believe me, for all the people that are out there that go, he should do this with it, or it should be a shot, your perspective changes when you see it from that spot, and you're going, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do with it? And you're trying to be methodical. Now, granted, I still think there's things they can improve on their power play. I'm not giving the power play a pass, but I'm saying it is a different perspective than I like.
On the power play for everybody.
I guess I walked right into that one.
Yeah, you sure did.
But you know what I mean, like to watch a game like that. But that's what I've wondered is where are they going to put it? And see, but that's my thing. If they put 5,000 people in the building and put them scattered around the lower bowl and said you've got enough space to make this work, like here's 3 people who came together who get to sit in the one row, and at the other end of the row we can put 3 more people because you're far enough apart. We skip a row and a half row or 2 rows, and the next row can be used however they have to do it.
I'm sure they'll have their
if they move, like if they could even move us, because I think the object of what they're doing right now, as far as I can tell, is there's no reason why we couldn't technically be in the press box if we wanted to.
Okay.
I think it's to avoid putting people on an elevator.
I think that
because
makes sense.
You're in a confined space, and it's not exactly the shortest elevator ride. This.
No.
It's
it's a long one.
But the only other thing that's different now is that when I don't remember if I think it was when you did it, were we coming in through the we came in through the new entrance, so it would have been you're still on the concourse and you're going from not event level, the main concourse to the highest point, which is the balcony level.
Right.
That's
Although we did stop all the way down first, so I did see the whole bottom to top ride.
Right. Well, but that's what it used to be, because you actually legitimately used to come in all the way at the bottom level at ice level.
It's quite a long ride, bottom to top.
Which, by the way, if they hadn't done that before, they would be because they've already changed it. Like you come in through the main concourse now. If they hadn't changed that yet, they would be after all this stuff, because now it would be don't even come in on the level where the players come in. Don't.
Right.
No. Like I think that's changed for good. But beside the point, I think that's the reason why. So I think that if they could still, if they could fit 5,000 people in the building and still give the media and team employees and things like that who are operating this whole thing an entire level of the building. Like I actually thought at the very beginning, until I saw how they did it, where they gave us spots in the lower level, I thought what we were going to actually end up happening was we were either going to work out of the balcony in that open air lounge they have, where you could space people apart at the counter space that they have, and say, here's a plug, here's outlets for your stuff, but here's where you're going to work. Or they were going to give everybody, or give 2 people one suite. Right. And say 2 people are in this suite, 2 are in that suite. And that's the extent of sharing your space. One person can take one side, the other can take the other, however they have to do it. And instead, don't get me wrong, I think they actually did it the right way. I think they gave everybody and the cool part is that they're doing the same thing for both teams. Like whatever it is, they're trying to keep it identical.
Sure.
I'm not I have my doubts that this is going to happen, to be honest. I don't think the city's going to okay it.
I probably agree with you.
I think that you're still a couple months away from this, but we shall see. I mean, let's do it this way. The city did okay fans at Eagles games for a little while.
For a little bit, yeah.
But that was at a time when it was early in the year. It was still warm enough, and then it got colder, and cases went up, and they said no more. And so it lasted for what? I think 3 games is what it lasted for out of 8 that they get to host every year.
Something like that.
And you're already going to be, I don't know how many home games in they are. I think the game they played in Lake Tahoe tonight is the 15th of the season.
Okay.
Technically, I mean, it wasn't supposed to be, but it is.
Well, let's talk about number 14 here.
Yeah, and it's a good place, and it's a good place to be because it's technically the quarter mark. I mean, we've kind of sat on that for a while. We've been sitting on the idea that
we teased that on the show 2 weeks ago with a Washington game that ended up never happening, but it finally happened on Thursday against the Rangers. And you know what? Given who was on the roster, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the events leading up to that game, but given who was on the roster, honestly, I think the Flyers played a really good game on Thursday. And I said as much in my post game, but when you're missing your top 6, a point's not bad.
Right. I thought they played a pretty good first period. And then I thought in the second period, as the game progressed, you saw the Rangers get better. And that's not to say that's the concern, but you saw the Rangers get better. You kind of saw it starting to go against you just a little bit. And I think the area that I think it really changed, this is the way I saw it anyway. I was down there on Thursday night, and as I'm watching, I knew it was not mathematically possible, but I looked and I went, I think we're 8 minutes into the game, and I believe Sean Couturier and Kevin Hayes have both played 5 minutes. And like right away, I'm like, these guys are playing a ton right now. And rightfully so, because they're the most veteran guys you have. But I'm like, these guys are playing a ton. And I feel like as the second period and into the early part of the third period kind of got to a certain point, you saw those guys start to get tired because not only was half of the team out to begin with the COVID list thing, but these are guys who hadn't played in a game in 10 days and had 10 days off or had 7 days completely off the ice anyway, 2 practices maybe, or 1 practice and a morning skate. So it's like, I think I finally saw the conditioning come back to haunt them. Like the Rangers had just played a game 2 nights ago, like before that.
Right.
So the Rangers are kind of in game shape, and this team is not in game shape. And it's like,
yeah, But listen, it was nice seeing the late game push. And it was nice. They executed it really well. And in a game where you don't have Claude Giroux, where you don't have Jacob Voracek, where you don't have Travis Konechny, these guys who are making the late goal money, it's nice seeing a guy making under $1 million step up and, Joe Farabee scores the game tying goal with a minute and a half to go.
He's not going to be making less than $1 million for too long.
Certainly not. Joel Farabee.
He's having a year. He's having a great year. He really is delivering on what I thought he was going to be. He's having that kind of season. Like he's having that kind of breakout year where you're seeing the potential from him. I believe it was his 7th goal of the season, which is saying a lot actually, because it's still only the 14th. Like you sit there and you look at where everybody else is in the schedule and you go, oh, it's that 7 in 20 games, right? No, for them it's 7 in 14, and he's again going to be in a spot. Like I could see him. I don't know how this game in Lake Tahoe is going to go because they're still shorthanded. And it's Boston this time. It's not the Rangers. Like you can play the Rangers. Like I think you just saw this. You can play the New York Rangers with half of your forward group, the defensive group you've had all year that we've had complaints about before, and your number 1 goalie, and probably still find a way to win that game.
Sure.
I don't think you can play the Boston Bruins with that lineup and find a way to win.
No.
That being said, I don't think that they're going to get necessarily, I don't sit there and say they're going to get blanked tonight,
No.
And I do see a guy, like if I see a guy doing something, Joel Farabee's quite possibly in the middle of it because I see it being this Couturier, Farabee, JVR line that all 3 of them and Couturier's still getting his footing. Don't get me wrong. Like imagine being Sean Couturier and you finally come back from this injury. You missed every game of the season essentially, except for the first one. Like if we're being realistic, he had 2 games to his credit going into it. You play your 3rd game of the year. You don't even look that good in the first period, but by the end of it, you have 2 goals. Okay. That's, kind of picking right back up where you left off, right? Where you thought, and then you have to wait for 10 more days to play your next game, which on one hand is good news because if you weren't fully recovered and tried to come back anyway, you should be now.
I'd be willing to bet a large sum of money that Sean Couturier did not wait till he was 100% to try to come back.
Oh, I agree. But at least you got those 10 days, so he should be fully or close to fully healed now if he wasn't already,
Should be,
but he gets 10 days off and he comes back, and yes, it didn't look like he was completely there at the very beginning, because like, how do you come back from that? You just had what, a month off basically. I mean, it was almost a month off before he could play another game. He took 3 weeks off
You've
with the
barely played
injury.
hockey in like 8-9 weeks at this point.
Well,
If you're
not
Sean
only that, but
Couturier.
like, you go from the whole thing, right?
Right.
The playoffs ended in September. You had all this time off. You come back for a week-long training camp, 2-week-long training camp, whatever it was,
Something like that.
and you get into your second game, 45 seconds, and you're done. So
Right.
you got hurt.
Well,
You're
that's what I'm
done.
saying. In the last 8-9 weeks, we're going back into like January and through December. Sean Couturier has barely played hockey this season.
Kind of. I mean,
That kind of
close
break
to.
would be brutal.
Yeah, I mean, well, if I go to the previous, if I go back through the whole previous year and you go, he was perfectly healthy all of last season, which is part of why you won a Selke, by the way.
It was great.
So
Yeah.
you had him for that, the January, February into March, and everything's going well. And then that first pause happens. Here comes 4 or 5 months off, come back for the playoffs. Still looked pretty good in the playoffs, obviously, and that's a month-long grind. And then here's another 3 months off, come back and, see where you can pick back up, and you get hurt right away.
Yep.
And then you come back finally from that injury and your team is on
It's
COVID
COVID.
lockdown.
Yeah.
Like, it's just unfortunate. But
Well,
if he
pick it up
continues to
here.
get his footing under him, like, you're putting him with two of your best scorers this year.
Right.
now.
Sean Couturier has proven over the last couple of years, scored 30 goals a couple times over the last 2 or 3 seasons, won a Selke last year. Sean Couturier is starting to establish himself as one of the more elite players in the NHL. And if he comes back and, does what he has done in the past.
Right.
Again, and that's why we've been looking at the record like we've been looking at it, because this team has been troubled in terms of how they've come about a lot of their wins. But we sit here and they're adding their, arguably their best almost definitely their best forward, arguably their best player, full stop at this point. And you're in a pretty good spot. You're at the quarter mark. You're floating around first place. Yes, Boston is a very good team. Yes, I think they're probably going to win the division at this point because they're a juggernaut. But you're floating around in the conversation and you're not out of it for sure. At the quarter mark, where do you see the Flyers right now? Like where do you see where they're at currently?
I mean, I see a team.
I know currently is tough because half the team's still on the COVID list, but
right. See, and that's the disappointing part. Like, it's not even that's the disappointing part, but like, I look and I go, based on the way the standings are, they're in a really good spot, because let's just say the season ended today, they're a 2 seed because of points percentage. Like, when they've played, and that's why I think it was so important what we're talking about right now with this game against the Rangers. If we've talked about how many times they found a way to win a game that they probably shouldn't have won, forget the result of Thursday's game. They had every reason to not be able to get a point in this game. And with 1:14 left, they find a way to tie the game and they get a point out of it. And, you're watching it kind of like, I watched that game with such a unique perspective because of the fact that I think that that's one of the few times I walked in there and I go, there's no expectations in this game. You know who's playing. This is almost like
a preseason game.
Yes. This is almost preseason mode where it's like, hey, here's 2 guys who have never played, not never played, but who haven't played up at this level this season. One guy who's making his debut, one guy who's playing on the wing for the second time in his career. Like,
there was a little bit of a whatever happens kind of
right.
vibe.
Maybe this is just like a measuring stick game, not in terms of how you stack up with competition, but what you got in the system. Like, let's see who we think has a shot to.
Sam Marin, what you got? Maxim Sushko, what you got?
Right.
Andy Andrioff, what you got?
Now, I find it interesting because one of the things that came out for the Sunday game, Mark Friedman's going to kind of play a hybrid role. He's going to play wing/defense, which I don't think he's going to play as much forward as people think, by the way. I think he's going to be more of a 7th defenseman than a 12th forward.
The old Sammy Kapanen, huh?
I get. Well, he's a defenseman by nature anyway, so.
Yeah, he played forward. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Kapanen was a forward who played defense on occasion. That's what it is. It was a joke. I believe they had Sammy Kapanen play defense when they were short a defenseman, so he was like the 6th. Like, that's how bad defensively their depth was at times.
It was crazy.
But nonetheless, so the interesting part, though, is who's coming out, because I think David Koch is the one who's coming out, and I thought he was actually one of the better bottom 6 guys in the Thursday game because his energy level is always present. I don't know that he made a lot happen in that game. I think he was adjusting to the NHL level. I think he was getting far fewer minutes than I think he usually gets in an AHL game to make that impact.
Right.
But he certainly looked the part in the AHL before this. Like if there was an obvious call up to make to the taxi squad to say, we got to fill out this lineup with somebody, that was as obvious as it got.
Absolutely.
Because he was having really, really strong games in the minor leagues. And that's the guy knocking on the door that you go, when the opening is there, when the opportunity arises, that's who you call up. And there were a lot of people who I did see talking about how this would have been the perfect spot for Morgan Frost to be able to step in and try to get something more significant. And that's not a wrong statement.
It's true.
It is. But the bottom line is it doesn't matter. He's not available either. So I'm not going to think about hypotheticals when.
Right. Hypothetically, Claude Giroux would really help this team too.
Sorry, I just made a face on it for anybody watching on the video. Anybody who saw the Edmonton-Calgary game last night.
Yeah, that was rough.
Well, Slater Cuckoo took a hit kind of like what it was an interference penalty, and that's true because it was a shoulder-to-shoulder hit. He just posted on Instagram an X-ray.
Oh,
and this thing is this thing is very bad. Like this is what just popped up on my Twitter feed, and
are you retweeting it? Can people follow you at Kevin _?
I'm not retweeting it because of the fact that it's not the team that I'm covering. Like if it was a Flyer, I would be all over. But I did watch that in the moment, and now it just popped up, and I'm like,
they should follow you at Kevin _Durso. Anyway.
Yes, they should. But so I'm trying to get back to where we were with this. By the way, speaking of the minor leagues, I got to throw this in there because we've done this before at times.
By the way, I would just like to point out that you just said, I'm trying to get us back where we were, and then said, oh, by the way, and you're about to start.
Well, because I was back to where we were. Back to where we were was David Kasha.
Okay.
So speaking of David Kasha, I want to give a quick shout about something in a couple of Phantoms games I've seen, because a guy who you love,
my boy,
because you said he's had the best name in the draft this past year.
Yeah.
Zayd Wisdom is killing it right now at the AHL level. So much so that depending on how the situation looks down the road here with these guys on the COVID list, it is not out of the question that he could get called up because he is available at every level.
So I know it's a different situation. Joel Farabee did it.
Right. And it's but
I know it's a different, I understand there are different expectations on the player, and Joel Farabee had played in college. I get it. But you are getting to the point where, and I tweeted this at some point. I think I tweeted this, or I texted you guys this. I texted you guys this. It wasn't a tweet. It was why not?
But well, no, not why not. But it's look. He's got 4 professional games, so he's not getting called up for Lake Tahoe or things like that, right?
Of course.
But the longer that you're in a situation like where you need a guy, like I don't think he will ever see the NHL once you have your full lineup back, like. Right. Once you have Giroux and Voracek and Konechny and Lindblom and Lawton back, you're going, well, now we filled out our forward group, and you're going to call up Kasha if you need a guy like to ride around for a little while on the taxi squad, not Zayd Wisdom.
But you're saying if the Flyers need a guy for Wednesday against the Rangers,
like if they needed to, like I'm not saying, and I'm not even saying for that game, but what I'm saying is that in a game where everybody talked about the Phantoms they were playing Binghamton last night, I believe, of what it was, the Binghamton Devils. Okay. And in a game where everyone turns because they actually had a game moved at one point in time. They had a game rescheduled earlier in the week because they literally didn't have enough players. The Phantoms didn't, because the Phantoms had to give so many players to the Flyers for the taxi squad for the call-ups to fill out a roster for a game that they had to postpone a game with no roster. Like essentially.
Yeah. Welcome to the COVID era.
No. So people looked at this game that the Phantoms were going to play and go, well, don't exactly have high expectations for this because they're shorthanded too.
The Flyers have.
Right. They're shorthanded too. So if you're thinking they're going to go out and win the game or something like that, I don't know. It's a lot of guys who have never and I believe the only reason that they actually were able to hold the game is because Linus Sandin and Tanner Lashinsky, who were hurt for a little while, were able to come back. So there were 2 more players that now were not injured, and they could fill out the roster because they go, well, they got 12 forwards. Literally, that's what the conversation was. 2 guys came off of injured list, and now they have 12 forwards. They can play a game.
So what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong here,
okay,
is that losing 4 of your best 5 forwards is bad.
Well, yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
In much more complex terms. But the bottom line is
a vacuum through the whole organization.
Sure. But the
Flyers are tough. The Phantoms are in tough. It's bad times in Philly right now.
It can. Yeah, it is. Well, it is, but it's not because the Flyers played. Because the Flyers played a game with a shorthanded lineup and still got a point, which is why they are tied for second place in the division right now.
Yeah, but then again, we are kind of looking at tonight's Boston game is a probable loss. Let's be real.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing too. I look at that though, and I go, Washington plays later today, so they're going to have another game. Like, there's still going to be 2 games ahead of the Flyers in their scheduling. Pittsburgh's 2 games ahead right now. I think Pittsburgh plays tomorrow on Monday night.
Oh yeah, the Flyers are in a great spot.
Or something like that. Maybe not Monday. Maybe it's Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday against Washington. Like, the fact that the Flyers lost a few games on the schedule that had to be moved to be stuck on 14 right now gives them an edge, because every other team, they're tied with 3 teams in the division for second place technically at 19 points. Boston's ahead with 22, which, by the way, for a team that has played throughout this whole process as well, is not that far ahead.
No. Well, and another thing that I do want to put on the record, like, yes, Boston is a better team, and especially when the Flyers roster is as depleted as it is. But Carter Hart is getting to the point where he can steal you a game.
He is. I mean,
and there is always that possibility.
I haven't seen anything when they've played Boston that tells me they can win this game, even with Carter Hart at his best.
I agree, but you never know. Maybe Carter Hart comes out tonight in the in the prime time.
Here we go. No, and I'm saying here we go because watch them win tonight. Watch them win this game. They have no reason. We're literally. I've seen a number of people going like, just don't lose by 5. It's going to be a 6-1 game. Watch them win this game tonight.
This podcast finds a way to become obsolete very quickly. It is often via news. This time it might be via a bad take about the Boston game.
So I meant to tell you this before we start recording, and I guess I'll just give the plug anyway, because the other podcast that I just started doing with Hunter Brody from 97.3.
Throughout the social media.
Well, for him it's just Broads81. There's not a Twitter page for the actual pod yet.
Okay.
But I don't know if there will be or not. That's not my thing.
If and when there is, we'll make sure to throw it out.
But you can find it on all the same places that you find the YWT podcast. So like when we say, you find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that type of stuff. The only exception is this is not exclusively on sportstalkphilly.com.
Okay.
So, but that's beside the point. But it's called Open Ice Hits. But we dropped our second episode on Thursday. And I get a text. We recorded it on Thursday morning, bright and early. And I get a text later in the day that goes, so kind of hard to announce that you just dropped a new episode when Carson Wentz gets traded on the same day. Like we were all hopped up about this. We're thinking we've got a new episode ready to come out. And then he goes, yeah, so the trade finally happened.
Kevin, are you sure you want to work in the media?
I've already been doing
a little bit of a black cloud hanging above you.
I've already been doing it for long enough. I know what happens by now.
You're pot committed at this point.
Yes,
you know that everything you write is just going to be out of date.
Yeah, pretty much. But anyway, so what were we talking about with the division again? We were talking about the fact they have games
somehow in second place with games.
We're talking about how they have games in hand. That was one thing we were talking about. But like, we got off to that subject a little bit there, and
us never.
Yeah. But like the bottom line is that, like, because your question was, where are they right now? Like, where do they stack up? And the bottom line is that from a points percentage standpoint, they're getting points. Like, I don't know if they're going to win this game, tonight. I don't have expectations for it. I think that I'm wondering the other thing is I'm wondering who's going to be back, because I guess I'm concerned at this stage of the game now that nobody's come off the COVID list. I understand why they had to announce from the beginning these guys can't go to Tahoe. I get that, because that would mean that somebody would have to be off of the list when they traveled. Right. So that was Friday. I get that. If they didn't play on Thursday, what are the odds that they were going to be off the list on Friday? I get that. But I kind of was hoping that somebody, at least a couple of them, would have maybe come off on Saturday or Sunday, so that before the team could even come back, you can say, all right, you're allowed to go back to Voorhees. You're allowed to go back to the skate zone and skate around for a little, get some ice time, warm up a little. Right. This way, when we come back for practice on Monday or Tuesday, you get to rejoin the practice. You can be part of the morning skate on Wednesday too. And then this way, maybe you can play on Wednesday night.
Right.
That would be ideal. And even because I sat there and I looked at the game against the Rangers on Thursday and go, they play this team again in a week. They win that game on Thursday with maybe 2 more regular forwards.
Yeah.
Because if they can construct 3 legitimate lines instead of 2, they'd probably find a way to win that game.
if you have Travis Konechny and Jake Voracek, you probably win that game.
Or I was even thinking
any combination there.
Right, any combination. But I was thinking like even if you have Drew and Voracek and you can put your normal power play out there for the number of, because that was the other problem I had with the game, by the way. The number of penalties in the game really disrupted the flow of the game.
Yeah.
Like I think it finally started to get good in the third period because it was a close game. There were no penalties being called. You're just watching good 5-on-5. And don't get me wrong, the penalty in overtime was a bad penalty for Nolan Patrick to take because he didn't necessarily have to take it, but I understand why it happened.
Right. It's one of those.
And
ones
Nolan Patrick's a guy who right now has kind of been bothering me because he just doesn't, if there was ever a game for you to stand out a little bit, to try to step up and stand out, that was it.
This is when you want to prove that you deserve to be the number 2 center one day.
Right.
And when the rosters are well fit.
And I still don't see, I still don't see it, like I'm just not seeing it from him. And I understand, like, I'm still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but like, I'm looking at other guys and I'm going like, Sean Couturier comes back from getting hurt and has a 2-goal game, like
I think
it's and I'm not saying he needs to be on Couturier's level, but it's like,
yeah. Well, here's the thing. Sean Couturier also played all last season. Sean Couturier played in the bubble. Like Nolan Patrick has played 14 games with a 10-day break here over the last week or so. In the last like 2.5 years, almost 2 years almost.
Right.
It's not. He's not coming back from an injury where he missed a month like Sean Couturier is.
Well,
he's
coming
back from a major issue that cost him a season.
The thing that I'm having trouble with when it comes to Nolan Patrick, though, is I feel like I'm seeing the same guy from the first 2 years of his career, though, where it's 6 games on, 20 off.
Okay.
And then, you know what I mean? Like he can get hot. I'm not saying that he doesn't have the ability to play at this level, but he needs
to get consistent.
But and believe me, I'm one of these people who hates the idea of moving on from a kid at 21 or 22 because I think about what could happen. But I look at him and I go, I don't know if he goes somewhere else that he's going to be that player even there, because I'm not worried about a guy who goes on a hot streak for 5 games and then for 20 is inconsistent. And I don't want to give up on him yet. Like, that's what I'm saying. But like, we're 14 games into the season. He's played 14 games and he looks the same as he always has in every other situation. Like, he doesn't look like he's improved in any area, which for a guy who was supposed to be like doing all this. Well, and not only that, but you know what else it is too? He'd look better to me. And this is just my own observation here. He looks like he wants to think the game faster than everybody else does, and tries to be really, really cute with the plays he makes. Like, I'm going to make this super skilled play. It's going to be outrageous. It's going to end up on the highlight reel the next game. You know what I mean? Like,
he's trying too hard.
He on a power play. He was kind of playing in Drew's spot on a power play, but he tries this drop pass between the legs to nobody in particular because he's trying to be creative and move it quickly, but nobody else is doing that. So either you're the guy in the wrong because you're making a play way faster than everybody else can think. Like, either you're thinking the game faster than everybody else and it makes you a better player than everybody else does, or you're not as good of a player because you're not on the same page as your teammates.
Right. This team has a little bit of a problem with bad drop passes, for the record. And
I've seen
it's been better without Eric Gustafson in the lineup, honestly.
But I saw them with, like, I believe toward the end of the game, what was it? Like, Couturier was out there, Hayes was out there, Farabee's out there, Gustafson's at the one blue line, Provorov was out there, and I think it was either Van Riemsdyk or like somebody like that. And every single one of them looks like they know where each other is supposed to be, and we're going to cycle it around until we get that opportunity to get it toward the net.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And Nolan Patrick is like thinking it so far ahead that it's either I'm not on the same page as anybody, and I'm just trying, like, he's the guy who in a team sport like hockey is. He's the guy who's trying to carry it on his own shoulders and be Connor McDavid in that spot. Okay. And it's like, don't try to be David unless you really are Connor McDavid, where you have the total package, speed, skill, can do it all yourself, and you can make somebody else look stupid.
Yeah. And there might be some element of frustration on his part because
I can see that.
When you're told you're the number 1 pick for 2 years before you ended up going number 2, whatever. But when you're told you're the guy, I could see him being pretty frustrated with his NHL career at this point, right? Like, he's already lost a year. I'm sure he doesn't like being inconsistent. I'm sure he wishes he produced better, more consistently, more often.
Right.
I don't want to say the phrase change of scenery, but I think you might have a point that we might be getting to the point where that might be good for him.
Yeah, look, neither do I. But all right, there's one other thing that I will say about him.
And he's gonna burn us, by the way. You trade him away, he scores an Eastern Conference Final game winner against us 100%.
Well,
100%.
I see. I was thinking less trade away and more like he's the type of guy that if they put him out there in expansion and he got taken, I don't know if I'm heartbroken over it. Like, you know, like not when I'm actually finally like not in a year when I'm seeing Jake Voracek look like the player that he was paid to be, and not when I'm seeing James Van Riemsdyk like score at a rate where it's like you're playing like the player you were paid to be. You know, I don't know what I'm getting. Like it felt like what happened to Nolan Patrick was here's a qualifying offer for you to basically extend your ELC, so you have a chance to prove again that you're at that next step. And I even want to give him the benefit of the doubt on something else. It's his first year with Alain Vigneault, technically, and it's like if there's anybody who can push him, like I definitely don't see that. Like I see a difference between trying to play your first 2 years under Dave Hextall and the demand is not near as high because he's not that type of coach.
Right.
And Alain Vigneault, who's out there like not afraid to sit somebody like Travis Konechny because he doesn't feel like he's getting what he needs, you know?
Right.
Like and I think that he's being generous with Nolan Patrick because of what he's gone through for the last 2 years. But at the same time,
giving the kid some leash for sure.
But at the same time, it's like, at what point in time do you stop looking at him like that and go, you've played 20 games and I'm not seeing what I expect from you. I need a bigger push.
At what point do you manage your expectations? And at what point do you start looking at Nolan Patrick not as a former second overall pick star of the future, but at what point do you start looking at him as a third line center and maybe a pretty decent one? But what if you start looking at him not as a guy with all this potential, but as a guy who might get a little better and kind of is what he is?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, see, here's the thing too. Like I'm looking at his game log right now.
Because he's missed large chunks of 2 huge development years, right? He missed a lot of his draft year and he missed all of last year.
Right.
At what point is development stunted?
But here's a guy I'm looking at right now who has 2 goals and 3 assists this year. Okay. And he went on a stretch where at one point in time, he starts the year off, goal in his first game, assist in his second, no points in the third, but then an assist in the fourth, assist in the fifth, none in the sixth, and a goal in the seventh. So in 7 games, he had those 5 points. Now you're at 14. So for 7 games, you haven't contributed in that regard. But it's not even just the lack of contributions in that area. Like I'm not trying to sit there and just downplay the guy and say, oh, the only reason I'm like talking like this is because he doesn't score. Right. Like I'm not trying to make that the thing, but I'm looking at also the 7 games since then. And I go, there's 2 games where you're -2. There's 2 more where you're -1. Like you're also on the ice for when you're getting scored against. Right.
Like, he's not doing much in addition to not producing.
Oh, and by the way, all 8 of his 8 of his 10 penalty minutes have come in these 7 games also. So he's taken multiple penalties. He's
been a rough stretch.
Right. This is a rough stretch for him. And it's not a good time for a rough stretch. And I get it. Like, look, the gap between some of these games is extensive. You know, like obviously there's 6 of these that are 1, and then there's 1, you know, from the return, so to speak. But
well, here's the thing. I'm still willing to keep, I don't want to say keep hope alive because that implies that your hope is dead on him, but I'm still willing to look at Nolan Patrick as, you know, that the guy who we thought he was going to be. But I think he's running out of time. And I think I'm willing to call a situation like this. He comes back. He's very excited to be back. He has a good first several games. And then he gets a little tired because he might be a little out of shape from having not played for a year.
He might be. I don't know, but it's like.
So if Nolan Patrick has 6 points in the next 15 games,
right,
and just slowly picks it up at some point, I could see it still being recoverable, but we're starting to get to the point where this might be a last season type thing. And maybe, like you said, maybe you see what you can do with Seattle.
The thing about Nolan Patrick to me, and this is the difference between the 2 players I'm going to mention. Nolan Patrick has had a long stretch of time off, came back, and there's excitement for what he could be, but I think there's expectations that he should be better than what he is or whatever. And Oscar Lindblom, who missed almost a year also, is before Oscar Lindblom got sick, before the cancer diagnosis, here's a guy who scores 11 goals and is leading the team in scoring and in 30 games is on pace for 30 goals, right?
Right.
And you go, so you sit there and you look at him and you go, I'm not worried about what you can be later because you're recovering from something that took you off of your track of being successful. But I know what you were before. I saw it. I saw 11 goals in 30 games. I know you can get to a higher level, and I'm willing to be patient with you because I know that, and I know you're recovering from something. That's not to say that people aren't sitting there saying Nolan Patrick isn't recovering from something, but it's looking at him and going, well, you're the guy. Animal. No, but you're going, well, you're the guy who was inconsistent a lot and had basically 13 goals in each season. Right. But you were a second overall pick. Like, that's the other thing. Oscar Lindblom is a fifth round pick. To have
severely exceeded expectations up to
right. So he's already exceeded expectations, and people look at that and go, well, I know you can score a lot in a season, so if you're not really there right now, I'm not worried about it.
Fine, you'll catch up.
But Nolan Patrick came with the expectations, and he's also not really lived up to them in each of the first 2 years of his career. So even after the year off, you're sitting here looking again and you're going, what is he going to, like, honestly, what happens if he plays out the fifth? The only good thing he's done so far this year collectively is played in every single game, which means that it seems like he's found a way to manage whatever he was going through a year ago. That's the only good part. But I'm seeing a guy who, like, and now again, I say this and he'll go out and score a goal tonight.
Guaranteed. Game winner.
Like game winner. That would be nice. I mean,
1-0 in overtime.
No, it wasn't. I'm sorry. It should have been the game winner. The other goal he had against New Jersey. I thought it was for a second. It wasn't the other one. No, it should have been. They scored with like 30 seconds left to take it away from them, right?
Yeah.
But whatever. Yeah, I mean, and look, that's not a discussion I planned to have today on the show. Was about like where Nolan Patrick's career is going.
We didn't.
But he's just a guy like he's just a guy like in that sense where in a game like Thursdays, I felt like that was an opportunity for him because he was going to get more minutes. And honestly, I think he played the same amount of minutes he normally did. Like Joel Farabee's out there. What's Joel Farabee? 2 years after that draft year, because I'm sorry, 1 year. Cam York would have been 2, I guess, right? Because Farabee was 18. Was an 2018 pick, and Patrick was a 17.
Farabee was the same,
but Farabee's a year younger.
The Braden Chen draft.
Yeah, but Farabee's a year younger is the point I'm making. A year younger and different path than Nolan Patrick had. Nolan Patrick was like you can't send him back to juniors guy because he's too good for juniors, and if you can't send him to the minor leagues yet, then you're going to have to play him at the NHL level because it's the only option for him. Joel Farabee went to college for a year, played in the AHL for a month, and then kind of didn't look back, and so it's close to the same track in a way. And Joel Farabee's out there playing 22 minutes in his second year because he's that good right now.
By the way, is on almost a 30-goal pace in a 56-game season.
Right.
He's on pace for 28. He's also on pace for 40 if this was a full 82-game season.
But that's the point right there. Here's a guy who 2 years into his career is not only taking a step forward, but is going like when guys are out of the lineup like that, stepped up and scored a big, but stepped up, scored a big goal, got you a point in the standings, and has continued to do it game after game. Like if you go and look at his game log and look at the different, like I'm not saying Farabee didn't have some bad games. There was a little bit of a stretch where he wasn't producing like that, but it's like he got it back, and now he's jumping all over the opportunity because he finally got one.
Hot take: I wouldn't be surprised if Joel Farabee fights tonight.
Okay, that's a really hot one. Okay.
Yep. And it's that kind of thing because he plays the right way, and I can see him. I don't know if he's standing up for a teammate or if they're down 3-0, he's trying to get the boys going, or there's a couple different situations. Let's see Joel Farabee drop the gloves with, I don't know, Charlie McAvoy. It's a decent little size matchup.
You're going to put Joel Farabee and Charlie McAvoy, the two USA products.
Yeah, absolutely. And there might be a little heat from back in the day. You never know.
I will tell you what, though. I don't think your take is that far off because, no, and I'll tell you why. Sam Morin's going to play tonight. I think he finds somebody to go after.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact, give me him and because the Bruins played a game against the Rangers fairly recently that was very heated. And there were multiple fights.
Yeah.
Give me Morin against Jeremy Lauzon.
Okay.
because that's like I can see it.
I wonder. Do you know what year Lauzon was drafted off the top of your head? I wonder if they played against each other in the queue.
I think it was a little too late for that. He might have been 15, maybe, because I think that was the year that the Bruins had the 3 picks in a row and passed on guys like Barzal, and it might have been. Or I'm thinking of somebody else. Hold on a minute. I'm thinking of
Zaboral.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Zaboral, but there's another. He was around the same time. I'll go look it up really quick because while we're at it, right?
Yeah, I got this. Jeremy Lauzon, I'm pulling it up right now. He was drafted in 2015, second round.
Okay.
So I just guess that means he might have been in the queue at the same time as Moran. Wait, wasn't Moran drafted in 15 also?
No, Moran was 11.
Oh, it was that long ago? Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I knew Sam Moran was old. I didn't realize Sam Moran was that old.
Yeah, Moran's been around for like that. That's why, like, when I describe him, I'm like, he's been around the block multiple times in terms of being able to possibly come up and not you know what I mean.
So Sam Moran was drafted in 2013, but he did play.
13, I'm sorry.
He did play in the queue until 2014-15. So they were in the QMJHL together.
Oh, that's right. No, because it would have been 13. Because I believe he might have been the same year as
Yeah, they overlapped for 2 years.
Yeah, okay, he was. I was gonna say Moran was the same
2 years in the queue.
Moran was the same year as Robert Haig. That's right.
Okay. Yeah, Jeremy Lauzon played for the Royun Noranda Huskies.
Oh, Royun Noranda. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sure, if you say so. Those Q names are weird.
I'm sorry. Okay, listen, I'm the person, like, I got made fun of earlier in the week. Broads was making fun of me earlier because I was watching last Sunday when there was no Flyers going on. I was watching the we did our show because we did it in the morning because we didn't have a game to worry about all of a sudden. And after it was over, I sat down. It was about 1:00. I had gotten the files out. Everything was set up. Everything was done. And I'm like, all right, what am I going to do now? My wife was out for a little bit, running an errand and things like that. So I'm like, I'm here by myself. What am I going to watch? I'm going to eat lunch and I'm going to find something to put on. And I didn't realize it. And I saw people talk, like I saw tweets about the Phantoms game. So I'm like, oh, okay, they're on in the afternoon. Perfect. So I got the stream up and I put it on and I'm watching. That was Zayd Wisdom's first 2-goal game of the week.
You love to see it.
Yeah. But I had it on and he's literally making fun of me for that. And I like, and he made a statement on the radio earlier this week that he goes, I'd be willing to bet my savings on it that he would have this minor league package, even if he didn't have to cover the team. And I wanted to sit there and say later on, if they asked me about it, that earlier in the year when we were really starved for it, when there was nothing like this, that I was literally listening on the radio to Halifax Mooseheads broadcast because Elliot Desnoyers was playing. Yeah, and he was one of the only prospects playing. And I'm like, I just want to listen to something that's in the moment. And this kid sounds really good. So I'm listening to that. So, like, if we're getting hopped up about guys, we're getting hopped up about guys for that reason, you know?
Absolutely. All right. So we have had a show here.
Yeah. Really quickly before we get out of here, I do want to pop up one of the other topics we have on here because we didn't mention it, and it's a quick one to go through. Just the other games that were moved, because I believe it was 5 of them, I believe, that were moved around a little bit. One of which
even seen this.
Okay, so one of which I'll do the best I can to try to recap all of them for you. So one of them is one of the home games against Washington that they have is now on Sunday, March 7th at 7:00. So they took off the Boston game that was there. That does not have a future date at the moment. That's to be determined.
Okay.
And they're playing Washington at home on that Sunday night instead. One of the games against the Islanders that they had was moved to March 22nd, which is a Monday night. Now it's sandwiched as a back-to-back against the Devils, so they're home for a stretch. One of their games against the Devils that was postponed because of the COVID situation the Devils were in is now on April 25th at 6. They had another one moved to May 10th at 7. So those are 2 of the obvious ones. I'm trying to think of what else. I believe the other games. So I believe right now what they're missing is this Boston game that was rescheduled and the Washington and Ranger games that were postponed last week as a result. They then just restructured some of the games to fit other things in. So they moved a handful of other games around to accommodate other teams' schedules a little bit. But basically, the 2 Devil games that we knew were rescheduled that they've lost are now the April 25th and May 10th. And then the only other one that really makes a difference is that they moved a Washington game somewhere in there to be on March 7th now. Pull the Boston game, so they have So they have a road game against Boston, a road game against Washington, and a road game against the Rangers that all are still pending at the moment. But everything else is there now, and there's a bunch of new things. Like, I believe they did it in a way so they didn't have to change the times of these games. So like the Washington game at 7, there was already a Boston game on the road at 7, so that's now just a Washington at home at 7. The Devil game on the 25th was already a 6 o'clock start against somebody else, I believe.
Okay.
That might have been an Islander game. That might be why an Islander game got moved, because that was originally an Islander game. Now it's a Devil game.
Okay.
An Islander game got moved up in the schedule somewhere. They put a Devil game after the end of the technical regular season to the 10th of May because they're going to have to start fitting games in at the end. So it's like, that's the dynamic of it. But bottom line being, there's a lot of things that were rescheduled. There's a little bit more clarity now. I mean, realistically, they're not really that far away from what they were before. Like, it went from being 4 games don't have a date to 3 do, or 3 don't. Okay. So like, we're still waiting, but I think more than anything, they're trying to get out of the situation first and then look at where it is. I mean, if I go and I just really quickly check the COVID list that the NHL has collectively, the number of players on the list, the Flyers still have 6. I believe there's 6 for every other team in the league.
Oh, wow.
Like, there's 30 other teams with 6 total players combined.
Okay.
And one of them is Ryan Dzingel for Ottawa, who is on the list because he was traded.
Oh, right. Is only in protocol for
He's only in protocol.
Right. For like border
you
purposes.
have, I mean, otherwise, you have the one-off situation that somehow has worked itself out with Tomas Nosek of Vegas, who was pulled mid-game with a positive test. That somehow or other the rest of the team does not have it. St. Louis.
We'll see what comes out in the next couple of days now that the Lake Tahoe hump is over for them.
Yeah.
We'll see.
St. Louis had Sammy Blago on yesterday. Philip Hedl has been on for the Rangers for like the better part of a week at this point. Capo Caco went on the list on Saturday, which is
mildly concerning.
Yeah, something to watch because the Flyers just played him on Thursday night.
Right, we've seen this dance before.
And Minnesota has Andrew Hammond on the list, but that might just be a carryover effect from same thing, like one guy who they at one point in time they had like 8 or 9 on, or maybe it was more than that. They had like 12 or 13 on the list. I think Minnesota.
Yeah, well, it's good to see these numbers coming down across the league. Obviously, we're all hoping that this season ends up getting completed in a healthy fashion. But one thing I did want to mention before we get out of here too, since we're talking about the whole league here, Austin Matthews is good at hockey.
You think?
So James Myrtle tweeted, Austin Matthews is the first NHL player to have 18 goals in his first 18 games in the last 15 years. You know who did it last?
I'm
thinking a little trivia question for you. 15 years ago, we're talking 2006.
2006 was the last time somebody was on like nearly at a goal per game.
After 18 games, yes. Had scored 18 goals in 18 games.
Eric Stahl?
No, a little closer to home, actually.
Really? Okay, hold on a minute. I'm trying to think because that was a cup team that year. So I'm thinking about this year. 06. A little closer to home, but it's not a Flyer, but it's closer to home. Was it a Flyer?
Don't be so sure.
Not Danny Briere, is it?
It was not Danny Briere. I believe Danny Briere, or this person benefited from playing with Danny Briere.
In 06? Well, 06, Briere wasn't.
Or was Briere there in 06? No, Briere wasn't there.
Briere wasn't a Flyer in 06.
I'm sorry.
Was it Gagne?
It was Simon Gagne. Simon Gagne had 18 goals in his first 18 games.
Oh, no. Hold on. I know what year this was. Quite possibly. This
was the year after that?
No. If you're talking about 06 was when this happened. That was the year Gagne was playing with Forsberg, and they lit it up in the first 3 months of the season.
Right.
Gagne got hurt that year, I think, for a little while, or Forsberg did. One or both of them did.
I think that was the Forsberg got hurt a lot the year he was here.
Well, yeah, the year and a half.
Wow.
It was the second, because the first year they actually looked like they could win a playoff series.
They did. I was excited. I remember being excited about that team.
If I'm not mistaken, so that would have been Gagne, Forsberg, and Knuble, right? That would have been the year of that line.
Remember Mike Knuble in the first post-lockout year? Oof. All right.
It was a good team. That was a good team. They were a fun team anyway.
Yeah, sure.
They got even better 2 years later in 08 when they were really hitting it,
Absolutely. That team was a lot of fun. Either way, I just kind of wanted to mention that it's not really.
It's good. Yeah.
It's crazy. 18 goals in 18 games. Austin Matthews has a chance to do some special things this season. And listen, I'm here for league history, right? We have lived in an era where Alexander Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer of all time, and that might very well still be the case. But
so
it's nice.
Did we have a drop of both players, and we need to say like this? So they're good at hockey, right? We mentioned Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews on this show because both of them are ridiculous. Okay, if Matthews is on pace for, or not on pace for, but has 18 in 19 games, I have to go and see what the number is because there was a tweet about this earlier too.
Right. By the way, the team played 19. He actually missed one, so Connor
McDavid has played. Pace. How many games has Edmonton played? Have they also played 19? 20. I'm sorry, they played 20.
Okay.
Connor McDavid has 37 points in 20 games.
Stupid. He's gonna hit 100 points in a 56 game season.
Let me see if I can pull it up really quick because I saw it like right before we started recording.
He's gonna hit 100 points.
But somebody posted it. Somebody did post it because it was like he's on pace for 100 and something points.
So at what point do fantasy hockey leagues do what they used to do for Gretzky back in the day and just ban him?
I don't know.
Because fantasy hockey leagues back in the day,
he had 5 points. He had 5 points in the game. Halfway through the game last night.
Right. But there were a lot of fantasy hockey leagues back in the 80s, back in the infancy of fantasy hockey, that said, no Gretzky. You pick from everybody else. He's out because it's just not fair. Because if you get the number 1 pick, if you get Gretzky, you're winning the league. And we're kind of starting to get to that point with Connor McDavid. Like, at what point? It's never going to happen.
Here it is. McDavid. So Austin Matthews has 18 goals in 19 games, which means that technically he has a shot and very well might score 50 in a 56 game season.
Yep.
Connor McDavid is on pace for 103 points in a 56 game season.
Who gets the Hart?
McDavid.
Really? If Matthews scores 50?
If Connor McDavid scores almost 2 points per game in a 56 game season.
If Matthews scores 50 goals.
Yes, because
in a 56 game season.
Yes, because Matthews has 18 goals and 29 points. McDavid is like going to put up double the point total.
I think you forget. Yeah, but how many goals does McDavid have? I know he has a lot, but how many?
12.
So
in 20.
So he's probably going to end up somewhere around 30. If Matthews has 50,
well, hold on. You think he's going to end up around 30?
Sure. If he paces out, he's going to end up around 30. I know it's Connor McDavid.
What I'm looking at right now when it comes to numbers, and I know they're cutting it off at he's on pace for 103.
Right.
In 20 games, he is at near Gretzky territory with 2 points per game almost. Like,
I know.
When you're near 2 points per game, like I'm not talking about every night he goes and scores a goal or every night. Like Matthews is the only thing that would make Matthews possibly the guy who I would say he gets it. Is if he continues to be not at a pace, but if he goes out there and gets to 50 because he has 18 multi-goal games in his 56 game season, like I think he's got 3 in his last 4, right? Like I
don't think people care about how the goals come. I think you look at 50 goals.
No, I know, but I'm saying like if he does something like that where you go, it's not just 1 a night, it's 2 a night, and he did it 18 times a year, so he got to 36 by playing in 18 games. And then, oh, by the way, added the 14 later because that wasn't that difficult.
Right.
Then I think people are going to really start to notice because that's going to change everything. But
listen, either way, we love to see it, and it's great for the league. Like having 2 superstars like this is fantastic for the league, and when you put them in the same division. Looking at
the league point totals, it's outrageous because McDavid has 37, Draisaitl has 30. Mitch Marner has 30 and Matthews has 29. And then the next highest you finally get when you tap into the
normal human beings.
No, tap into the American game.
Oh,
is Patrick Kane at 26. And then, oh, wait, hold on a minute. The next guy on the list in 6th place is Mark Scheifele for Winnipeg. He's got 23.
Oh, my God. There's no defense in Canada.
Kind of. I mean,
there's no goaltending in Canada.
Well, guess what? Guess who's in 8th place? Tied for 8th. I'm sorry. Brock Besser, Vancouver.
Canada.
Yeah. And then Quinn Hughes is tied for 10th with 20. So Canada.
Turns out there's not a ton of goaltending in Canada this year.
As a matter of fact, if I count just from I'll try to find a quick cutoff number. Okay, here we go. It only on the app, it's only showing me up to 17th unless I really go in and dig deep, right?
Gotcha.
I got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 players on a list though that has over probably about 25.
Okay.
So almost half of the list is Canadian players.
That's crazy.
You know, like I'm looking at Johnny Gaudreau is on this list. Nugent Hopkins, Ehlers.
You have Mike Smith and also whoever's tending goal in Ottawa. And also, like, there's some bad goalies in Canada, man. And that I think is leading to a lot of this.
It could be. I don't know. I mean,
well, either way, I think that leads to a much larger question about, you know, what league is the best. And we won't know that till the conference finals anyway.
Until we get closer to it. I mean, the cool part is like the East has stacked up now where there's 19 points for 4 teams and they're tied for second. The Central has been really tight. The Central has 4 teams over 20.
There's going to be a lot of fun races.
The Canadian division, the North division has a lot that are tight. Like I think everybody except for Ottawa is right in there in the race.
Yep.
So it kind of leaves the West as like the one that I'm not looking into too much right now.
Right.
That like you wonder like what does the West look like really quick? Okay, so the West is competitive. Oh, wow, hold on, man. So the West is completely separated by 7 points. Wow. So you have completely delivered on every game is competitive, and all it takes is one win within your division to be back into a playoff spot.
That's crazy.
Like, if you take out Buffalo, who hasn't played near as many games as some of the other teams, by the way, Ottawa,
Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa.
Right. If you take those 3 teams out, then every other team could make the playoffs this year.
Yeah. And we absolutely love to see that.
Legitimately.
That's really, really good for the league. And you know what's really good for this podcast? If you follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast.
Getting out of here so we can get ready for Lake Tahoe later.
Absolutely. You got all the socials, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Podbean. We're YWT Podcast everywhere. You can find the show everywhere, including on sportstalkphilly.com. Make sure to tweet them too. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Everything's been scrolling along the bottom of the screen. You know it by now if you're watching on YouTube. We got some things going on this week. There might be some interruptions in some scheduled programming. Follow our Twitter for more details about that as we go along. Pregame, postgame video should stick around. We'll see where we're at.
Here's what I will say. I can guarantee pretty much with complete certainty that you'll get the pregame. First of all, there will, by the way, for people who it's going to be a little late by this point, but I am making a pregame video for Lake Tahoe after this.
Of course.
So we'll do that. There will be a pregame video for the Ranger game on Wednesday. There will be pregame videos for the Buffalo games. Maybe not the, well, no, we'll see. I might be able to squeeze one in because I'll probably do it the night before after I get done the Saturday game, which is at 1:00, which I'm thrilled about. I love the fact that there's afternoon hockey for a change.
Absolutely.
I kind of liked that the previous week, the 12:00 one or 12:30, however you want to look at it. But yes, I can guarantee there will be pregame videos for those games. That I can guarantee. If Kyle has some interruptions on his end with the post game, and like we said, and it might be a little bit of a difficult week to do a full show, so we're going to see about that too.
Yeah, I got a little bit of personal stuff going on. We'll be back as soon as we can. And until then, take care. Follow us on Twitter. Watch the Flyers. See you later. We're going to have some fun at Lake Tahoe tonight.